Sketchbooks. They might be something you use, they might be something you don't. Probably fairly evident this is not going to be a hugely tech-based talk, but what I'm going to be talking about will hopefully be really relevant to you in one way or another, whether you actually use physical paper sketchbooks. It's not some kind of niche software you've never heard of, I promise, whether you use them or not. So I used to be unbelievably bad at using sketchbooks. And I know that sounds really weird. Surely you just open it, you make a mark in it, you've sketchbooked. But in reality, they were really, really frustrating. I ended up loathing sketchbooks because I was confronted constantly with the amazing sketchbooks that all my peers were producing. Throughout my whole educational and professional career, I'd see people carry little ones in their bag. Oh, they'd love them. Have a look at this cool page. They'd post them on Instagram, be like, oh shit, they look so cool. But mine never looked like that. And that's a bit of a problem considering I am an illustrator. It's what I do. I work visually. My work is visual. And it's a bit of an issue if I can't get those visuals out of my head and onto paper unless viciously and mercilessly chased by a deadline, which is the only way any problem solver seems to be able to work. So I would see sketchbooks like this everywhere. And that's why I started to hate them, because they were stunning. They were gorgeous. I'd see them all over Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, and the colors were beautiful. They were well laid out. The composition was perfect. They were really, really beautiful to see. And it was only a year or two ago that I finally started to realize this isn't actually a sketchbook. I know, plot twist. It's actually an art book. And there's a very different reason as to why that they are called art books instead of sketchbooks. The main thing I noticed is these are obviously beautiful, which is fine. They're gorgeous. They're lovely to post everywhere. They're lovely to see. You could put this up on your wall as a work of art. It's really pleasing to the viewer, but that's exactly where they fall short of being a sketchbook. Their audience is the viewer. A sketchbook's audience is the user only. That's the only thing they're for. And when they're used for their real purpose, they're brilliant, but when they're not, when they're used as art books, I briefly looked up sketchbooks on Pinterest, which is something that a lot of creative people use all the time, and I was confronted with this. It's beautiful. It's really, really nice to see, but it puts so much pressure on me to make my sketchbooks look like this. And I would spend hours planning them, thinking of color palettes, drawing little lines to write the notes on to make it all look lined up and beautiful, like I was doing GCSEs all over again. I would do it for ages and get so frustrated when my sketchbooks did not look like these. I didn't feel that I could post them anywhere. I didn't feel that they were proper sketchbooks because they didn't look like they could fit in amongst this Pinterest horde of beautiful things. This is what they look like now that I have finally realized that sketchbooks and art books are very different. This is a random page from one of my current sketchbooks. It's completely underwhelming, which is fine. And it's exactly what they should be. But it took me so long to realize that the audience should be me. But now my sketchbooks are exactly what they should be. They're a place to make mistakes. They're a place to be underwhelming, to be this, to be mad annotations everywhere, coffee stains, writing the word shit across a page because I got really annoyed with whatever I was drawing. That's fine. I'm under no obligation to post this anywhere. I mean, I know I have it on a giant screen showing you right now, but that doesn't count. They're just for me, my sketchbooks, right now. And I felt a massive pressure lift off of me the second I started realizing the difference between art books and sketchbooks. And it also helped me realize that by forcing myself to try and create art books when really what I needed was a sketchbook, I was fueling a massive problem that every single problem solver encounters all the time. Imposter syndrome. It sucks. It's awful. A real quick show of hands, who has heard of imposter syndrome before? Woo! That's very positive. Okay, keep your hands up. And keep them up if you've experienced it before. Yeah, I don't think a single hand went down there. Yeah. It's everywhere. Imposter syndrome is everywhere. Its reach is far and wide. And some of the people that just put their hands up right now might have been your peers, your friends, teachers, everyone. It reaches absolutely everyone. Whether you're an illustrator or a coder or working in marketing or writing, anything at all, it is for everyone. Great. So in short, imposter syndrome is the persistent belief that you are somehow do not belong in the field or the industry or the position that you are in, and that you're masquerading as someone else, that you're the only one doing so, which is this important thing to remember, and the fear that you may be unmasked as an imposter at some point. It makes you disregard so much hard work you would have put in to get to where you are now. All the skills you've developed, all the effort you've put in, all the money sometimes you've put into courses and software and learning. Basically, it is a huge and nasty defense mechanism against failure. And the disposal of all this self-belief and the disregard of all of your achievements will always lead to some degree of feeling disheartened and unmotivated. See, I'm an illustrator, I get to do these. It will always lead to some degree of it, all the way from second-guessing yourself a little bit more than usual, all the way down to complete work paralysis, where you will not be able to progress at all, where you will not be able to work at all. If we don't start on something, we can't fail at it. And that's where the work paralysis comes in, because we're so scared that our first failure will be the dropping of our wonderful little fancy dress outfit of someone who knows what they're doing. And everyone will realize, oh no, we're an imposter. So we just don't do anything. It's bad for your brain, it's bad for your career, and it's obviously bad for just the world as a whole to not ever leave your comfort zone. A huge perpetuator of imposter syndrome is social media. I'm not going to stand up here and say, everyone delete your Twitter accounts, it's evil. Because it's useful sometimes. I mean, I'm self-employed. I need social media to market my work, to network, to meet people. I'm sure a lot of you as well need social media in order to conduct the work that you do. But it is so heavily curated, it is so heavily user-censored, that it means everything we see on there creates a really nasty, false sense of reality in our heads. I know for me personally, I follow an awful lot of illustrators, obviously, and they post all this beautiful work, and I'm the same. I post all my beautiful work as well. I will never post a bad illustration on Instagram or Twitter, and neither will they, because my social media often dictates what art directors I attract, what commissions I get in. Why would I post bad stuff? And even though I consciously know that, I still end up slipping into the thought pattern of, I'm the only one who does bad artwork occasionally, because I see everyone posting just their good work. Despite knowing that's not true in reality, social media can sometimes brainwash us into thinking this. Another key contributor is working in isolation. And you can be doing that in an office full of people, or you could be doing that at home alone, working just with the cat. You don't have to be around people to be fixing isolation. And this lack of outside influences and reassurances lets us spiral really, really quickly. And it can be so hard to climb out of that horrible, nasty spiral by ourselves. So working in isolation really, it contributes to social media massively. Another one as well is toxic work habits. And this is one that I experience personally. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Whether it's self-imposed or whether it's imposed by a client or by a coworker or peers or anything like that, toxic work habits have this overwhelming belief that you should be worked to the bone, that you should be struggling for what you do. There's the whole rhetoric of, oh, you gotta be up, doing all-nighters all the time. That's great, you really care about your job, but not about your health, apparently. So toxic work habits are really, really bad, and a massively perpetuating influence I've seen about this is one of my least favorite websites in the world, which is Fiverr. I apologize in advance if any of you work for Fiverr, but I also kind of don't. Fiverr, look at the state of this marketing campaign they had. You eat coffee for lunch. Sleep deprivation is your drug of choice. That's horrifying. And yet they pushed it. It was everywhere. So this rhetoric is being pushed by people all the time, whether they're people you know or massive campaigns like this, to convince you that all your hobbies must be monetized, all your time must be spent working, you must be working for money and gain all the time. It's almost like there's this mysterious, overwhelming force telling us that we need to do these things. I can't work out what it could be. I have no idea. Oh, maybe it's that one. It's in magenta Comic Sans on purpose, by the way, to express how much I care about capitalism. So if you look up imposter syndrome, you will inevitably find this quote by Maya Angelou, which is perfect for what I want to talk about today, because it encapsulates two main things I want to talk about. One, what exactly imposter syndrome is. They're going to find me out. And two, it's Maya friggin' Angelou. If someone as amazing and brilliant as her could experience imposter syndrome, it is a clear marker that imposter syndrome is not based on your intellect or your successes or any kind of reason or logic, because she experienced it too. I was unlearning and relearning how to use sketchbooks, and that led me down the route of analyzing my own self-imposter syndrome. I had come to realize that by trying to create art books, I was just fueling it. I was fueling it so much because I was being an imposter in an art book world, when really what I wanted was sketchbooks. Because God forbid someone should see one or more than one bad illustration in one of my sketchbooks, because that's an art book. That's not what I was trying to achieve. But a few years ago, I made the conscious decision to stop verbally referring to art books as sketchbooks. I started calling them art books. In the same way that I as well have replaced the word talented with skilled, because I hate the word talented. It's really dismissive of all the effort people put in. Oh, you're so talented. Oh my God, it's amazing. I wish I had that gift. No, I spent years working on this. So by replacing talented with skilled and sketchbooks with art books when they were art books, it helped me a lot. And another thing that helped was stop buying nice sketchbooks. I would stop buying the pretty ones, the lovely ones from Paper Chase with all the gold on them, all the really nice ones, because there was this giant added layer of pressure to make sure you didn't ruin this beautiful book. So I started buying slightly shit ones. Sorry, I'm being really sweary today. Slightly shit ones that were smaller, the paper was a bit worse, they were a much more attainable goal and way less terrifying. So my sketchbooks became a place of safety and confidence. I felt like I was able to experiment in them, able to make mistakes safely. I was able to fail more, but then I had tons more successes as well. And as a result of this, my portfolio, my finished, beautiful client portfolio got way more interesting because I finally took the chance to realize what I could do instead of what I should do. So yes, some drawings, I made some bad drawings, but the ratio to bad to good switched so quickly, and I felt so much more confident in what it was that I could do, which is kryptonite to imposter syndrome. It hates when you're happy about what you do. But the key reason why using them the way that didn't help me was it's not just relevant to illustration. The main point is that I had found a place completely devoid of imposter syndrome because no one had to see it. There was no chance I was going to get unmasked. There was no chance I was going to get, oh, it's Bruce Wayne, ah! There was no chance of that happening. I am Batman. I didn't feel obligated to post it anywhere. These quick, crappy little sketchbooks, they weren't getting posted anywhere. No client was going to see them. None of my peers needed to see them. But I found having the ability to have a full brain dump without fear of rejection, without fear of failure, so massively empowering to my work. But if, perhaps for you folks, sometimes sketchbooks, notebooks, post-it notes, journals, whatever, if those don't work for you, there are a ton of other things you can start doing as well. Incredibly useful habit I have found is stepping back from what it is that you're doing and analyzing your motives for doing that thing. It can be really, really easy to fall into tunnel vision and just try and blast through the thing you're doing to move on to the next chunk of your to-do list without actually stepping back and thinking, okay, why am I doing this thing? Taking a moment to analyze that work will help you direct it down a healthy path so much quicker. For example, for me, I have to post a lot of my work on social media. And occasionally I have to step back and think, am I doing this because I want to get some extra followers on Instagram? Or am I doing this because I have genuine, impactful motives for the work that I'm producing? And I know sometimes it's not possible to always just do work for the impact and for the soul. But if you can direct it down a healthy route, you will notice a change so quickly. Because the more I find I lean towards the social media, lean towards this is work I should be doing, the more derivative and boring my work starts to get. So are you doing this work because you feel you should? Because you've always done it? Do you actually have to still do it? Are you doing it because you want to impress somebody? Are you doing it because you don't want to do something else and you're putting off doing that something else? Always take a quick step back and have a good analyze of why it is you're doing this thing. Another thing you can start doing as well is to start viewing yourself as a student a bit more. And I know that might bring back some horribly wonderful memories of being an actual student, but all bad pizza and Wetherspoons aside, viewing yourself as a student of your industry will help make this giant, overwhelming amount of stuff you should know or you feel you should know into things that you can start learning. Because imposter syndrome convinces us that we should know everything. And if we don't, that is not good enough. And everyone else knows everything apart from you. But if you start viewing yourself as a student, as someone who is learning, then this giant, unnecessary amount of responsibility will get lifted because the chunks will break down into something a lot more manageable. We go from, I should know all of this, to, I can start to learn some of this. People will work more efficiently and with more morale if they know they can fail and come back again. If they know they don't have to know everything, they can learn it and then come back. The industry leaders can start taking note of this as well, so they can start thinking about how they verbalize to their peers and their clients and their co-workers. They can start thinking about making sure it doesn't sound like a be-all and end-all. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be a ninja. You don't have to know all of these things, a superhero, whoa. You can know enough to do what you need to do, and then you can grow from there. Because again, this pressure that outside influences put on us makes imposter syndrome get huge. And by creating this sense of safety and understanding around the people that we work with and work for, our work will get better and our brains will get a lot better a lot quicker. We can start to achieve this by loosening the grip that isolation has on us a lot of the time. So I was saying earlier, you can work in isolation in an office full of people, and you can work in isolation by yourself, but we need to start loosening it ever so slightly, because imposter syndrome is hugely fueled by the belief that we are the only one experiencing this horrible feeling. It's further fueled by us trying to maintain a mask of, everything's fine, I know what I'm doing, don't worry about it. It's really, really tiring, and that's a ton of effort that we could be putting into doing the work we're panicking about, rather than sitting there thinking, God, what if I do this? What if it goes wrong? What if that happens? And what if this? If we felt safe enough to drop that and just do the work, it would make such a huge difference. And we can start feeling that safety by talking to other people. Because the second we talk to people without an imposter syndrome mask on, we will realize that everyone is in the same boat as us. I mean, just a minute ago when you all put your hands up to say you've experienced it before, that was a lot of you. And like I said, some of them will be your friends, some of them will be people you respect, people who you may have viewed as they can do no wrong. Which is what made a huge difference to me a few years ago when I spoke to an illustrator candidly for the first time. Someone who I thought, God, her work is always amazing. She's always producing cool stuff for cool clients. Oh, I wish I had that life. But she had the exact same insecurities and worries and panics that I did. And immediately imposter syndrome got a little bit smaller because I wasn't the only one experiencing it anymore. So finding the right peers to do that with will, I guarantee, change how you feel about your work ethic and about the work you are actually producing. And suddenly, imposter syndrome will have hardly anything to grab onto. You can't be an imposter if everyone around you is in the same boat. It can also be really helpful to look at that word, imposter, because imposters are always trying to fit in. They're always trying to be a brick in the wall, always trying to be another one of many. So what would imposter syndrome do if you suddenly started celebrating the differences you have compared to other people? It would hate it. It would hate if you did that. So that's exactly what you should do. We're going to be really mean to imposter syndrome. It's exactly what you should be doing. It will run screaming the second you start doing this. And I used to feel, and still often do, let's be honest, I'm not saying I'm cured of this, but I still feel very insecure about a lot of the work that I produce. I will be looking at these stunning swathes of art and illustration at conventions and online and at trade fairs, and I'd somehow think, God, I just wish my work could look like theirs. Why can't it just look like theirs? That'd be so easy. But the second that you start recognizing your new uniqueness and abilities and differences, your work will progress so much quicker, because that is what got you to success. That is what got you all the successes that you've had. Not fraud, not luck, not this was meant for someone else. It's the differences that you have that have got you where you are, despite the imposter syndrome goblin telling you that it was fraud. So take the time and effort to not only celebrate differences, but celebrate the successes that come of them. So when you are talking to your peers, again, remember without the imposter syndrome mask on, because that thing sucks, you're going to be talking about your successes too. So not only what you're struggling with, which is still important to talk about, but what has gone really well, what you're really happy with. When you're communicating with them without the mask on, always mention those things, what you're proud of, what you feel went really well. And I'm not suggesting turn into an egotistical maniac, Dom, but I am suggesting, sorry, all tea, all shade, but I am suggesting a little bit of ego is quite good. Because if we don't have an ego, we turn into a pile of self-deprecation on the floor, which is not a good look, right? So we have to have a little bit of a degree of an ego. If you feel that imposter syndrome mask is hard to shift sometimes, I'm going to wrap up a little bit more about it. So it is not just you, okay? Remember, okay, now that we've covered it a bit more, another show of hands, who's experienced imposter syndrome? That's nearly all of you. And those who can't, I need to talk to you at the end, right? You need to teach me the ways. So that is nearly all of you. This is not an isolated incident. And remember, like I said, it is not cured by intellect and success, because Maya Angelou experienced it. Nearly all of you guys experienced it. It is something that can be experienced by so many people, completely irrespective of their successes and how far up the ladder they are. Because just going up the ladder from intern, manager, whatever, those are just terms. Your brain doesn't change as you go further up. People up the top can experience the exact same stuff as people down the bottom. Okay? So do not feel that people up there are completely devoid of it. It is fueled by social media and isolation. Remember that false sense of reality, the spin that social media will put on the reality that you actually experience. And then isolation will mean you cannot get out of that false sense of reality. You'll be trapped in it. So make sure you avoid being too isolated. And I'm not suggesting be around people 24/7, because my Christ, that sounds like a nightmare. But I am suggesting occasionally make sure you talk to people, and talk to people honestly, not with the I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm British, I'll just say I'm fine kind of mask, all right? Because that thing's crazy damaging. And it is a temporary experience, a really important thing to remember. To the extent that the amazing women who first researched imposter syndrome and came up with the term later went on to say in an interview, we wished we'd called it imposter experience. Because it just passes, it's so quick. It is not something that stays in your brain forever. You can get rid of it. And remember, there are tons of ways to get rid of it. If you're finding it difficult to shift it, these things that we covered earlier, celebrate the differences that you have, because it is those things that got you your successes, not luck, not fraud. I keep saying it, but it's the key point. It's the seed of imposter syndrome. Actively avoid isolating. So try to make sure you do still communicate with people and still talk to them honestly. And remember to view yourself as a student. Break down those chunks of things I should know into I can start learning these chunks. Find whatever place works for you to do a safe and confident brain dump. Somewhere where you can feel you can make mistakes, because that's what sketchbooks are to me now. A place solely to make mistakes, to have the bad drawings alongside the good without fear of anyone finding them and unmasking me as being like, haha, look, she's not a real illustrator, she does doodles for fun, which is an illustrator, by the way, except we doodle for money. I promise I'm anti-capitalist. And lastly is altering how you verbalize things as well. So remember when I stopped saying talented and started saying skilled, I stopped saying sketchbook when in reality what I was looking at was an art book. And what I want to end my half an hour of yelling at you with is replacing a really, really common, horrible phrase that I see a lot of people say. This one. Fake it till you make it. Just keep smiling, it'll be fine. Horrible, horrible phrase. I hear it said way too often by way too many people who have far too little an understanding of what exactly this phrase does. So it is imposter syndrome's tagline. It is exactly what it loves people to do, to just keep pretending and keep imagining that you're doing fine, but really in your head you know you're not doing fine, and you're the only one who feels that way. When we've just covered that that's just simply not true at all. But we don't need to stop using phrases like this, because at the core of it is just keep going and act professional, and then eventually when you get up that ladder, everything will be okay. So we can replace it with something. We can kill, fake it till you make it, and we can replace it with something that I much prefer and that I use way more often now, which is hone it whilst you own it, which I love, because it's still, you still are professional. You're still owning what you do. You're still an illustrator, a writer, a programmer. You are still being this thing, but you are not faking anything. So you're honing your skills, you're being that student, you're learning the things you need to learn, you're not faking a damn thing, and you're owning it whilst you do it. Thank you very much. Also, as a side note, if anyone has any questions, I have a bunch of free, me-designed sketchbooks. If anyone has any questions, you get one if you have one. What do you guys think? Yeah, you got a question. Sorry, terrified of pencils.
So I like to do art and crafting. I was doing a sewing class. I picked up a pencil to sketch out what I was going to do. And I froze.
Yep.
Any advice to get past my fear of pencils?
So there's a fear of pencils here, and you see you get like paralyzed when you try and draw with one. Okay, so there's a little activity that I do because I teach a lot in schools and colleges. And I will give them 4 60-second blocks of activities to get over that fear, because the fear does stem from the sketchbook fear, where it's the first blank page and you don't want to make a mark on it, because what if it's a wrong mark? What if it's not going to go well? So I will give the students 60 seconds and I will give them a tiny bit of really bad, remember, use shitty paper, it will help. Really bad bit of paper, and they just have to fill it in 60 seconds, and then they scrunch it up and put it in the bin. That will help, because that is the first mark, and the second that first mark is done, there's no pressure anymore because you've done it. And it doesn't matter if it was really, really bad because it was on cheap, nasty paper. Like fish a receipt out of the bin. Whatever, doesn't matter. Scrunch it up, put it in the bin. That's the first bit done. So I started practicing it before I started telling it to students, and it hugely helped me. So maybe that will help with your fear of pencils. Also get a pencil with a really fuzzy topper on it. Silly, it sounds silly, but it makes it way more accessible.
It's less serious.
Less serious, yeah, less serious. If you've got a big giant fuzzy unicorn on the top of your pencil, you get a sketchbook. Any other questions from you guys? Yeah. Am I tempted to make an art book now? Sometimes, occasionally. I mean, when I got that screen grab of me scrolling through Pinterest, I did have a thought in the back of my head like, oh, I could make one of these now. I'm good enough, right? So yeah, occasionally I'm tempted, but I now actually enjoy using sketchbooks, which is something that I didn't think I'd ever find. But I enjoy having them really messy. I prefer, if I look through someone else's sketchbook, for it to look like a sketchbook rather than art books. I don't like looking through art books anymore. I prefer for them to be bad drawings, because that's quite nice. And you get a sketchbook, by the way, if you come up at the end. I know, right? Any more questions? Oh yeah, got one there. Oh no! You can be fueled by imposter syndrome. It'll fix your problems. There is a lot of research behind imposter syndrome just being a natural part of being a human being, which I appreciate. I can understand, yeah, we can't all waltz through life being like, I'm fantastic and no one can tell me otherwise. Because then we won't progress. I mean, I remember my old art teacher telling me artists can never feel they're good enough, because then they stop trying, and I was about ready to flip the table over and give up on art forever. But yeah, there is a lot of people who think perhaps imposter syndrome can help fuel what you do, but when it becomes debilitating, when it becomes a fear of leaving your comfort zone, that's when you need to check it and be like, no, this isn't based on reality. So there's a difference between feeling like you can strive for something and feeling like you're not welcome where you are right now. But yeah, I can understand that. You get a sketchbook. Anything else from you guys? Yeah? Yeah, so the question was, do you feel the location of where you're using the sketchbooks affects the pressure that you feel on yourself to do them? So yeah, sometimes if I'm doing it, weirdly, if I'm doing it in public, I find it easier, because there is this sort of thing, there's this trope that you can link yourself to. It's going to sound really stupid, but I'm going to be honest today, where you can look like a brooding, cool artist sitting in the corner with stupid green hair, being like, oh yeah, art, yeah, the concept, yeah. Where you can kind of feel like that, and it's sometimes, weirdly, that little trope does help me feel more confident in drawing in public. And I've recently started working in a co-working studio as well. And having that, it's not necessarily pressure, but having that accountability to be keeping on doing work and not draw, rub out, draw, rub out, draw, rub out, helps massively as well. So I find often drawing around other people to be easier than drawing by myself, even though logically it would seem like there'd be less pressure if you're by yourself. Yeah.
Is there something we can do collectively on social media by posting, if you were to post some of the work that you're really not happy with,
Yeah.
like someone else's imposter syndrome, should we all do the same? I fixed this really crappy bug today.
Yeah, seriously. I think everyone should. I mean, a good place that I've found people being honest on, does anyone use Medium, the blogging site? Yeah, it's actually really good for that. I'll find a lot of the time on social media, people will be doing that glamorized, polished, everything's perfect thing, but on Medium, I'll find a lot more people being honest. So if maybe, yeah, we could start some sort of group or a Slack space or anything where randos can't just come in and be like, you did a bad thing, then we'll feel way more confident because we'll see other people doing things that aren't necessarily perfect all the time. So yeah, I think that would be amazing. I think that would be really, really good.
We should do it where it's already a problem.
Where it's already a problem.
We can be safe with each other.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, safety in numbers. Safety in bad, imperfect numbers. Both of you get sketchbooks, by the way. Just come up at the end if you've got one. Okay, I think I have one more sketchbook left if there's one more question. Yes. Yes, totally. Yeah, because it's an experience, remember, so it flits between the two. So I flip between the two all the time. So yeah? Does success affect imposter syndrome? Does it fix it? Not even a little bit. I mean, Maya Angelou, unbelievably successful. I mean, every CEO in the world will experience imposter syndrome. Bill Gates did an interview before where he expressed he experiences imposter syndrome constantly. He feels like he doesn't deserve to be in the position he's in. So success and intellect are in no way antidotes to imposter syndrome. It is entirely down to how we can feel safe in numbers and confident in our abilities and confident in failing occasionally as well. Any more? I haven't got any more sketchbooks, but any more free questions? Nah, you're not interested now, are you? It's like, no, we're not getting free stuff now, I'm not doing it. All right, in that case, thank you ever so much for having me.